Is it's the 29th today, right? So it's December the 29th, 2023. And we do these lives every single week on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And since this is kind of the end of the year, 29th, obviously tomorrow being Saturday, and then 31st is on Sunday. So being holiday, I thought, why not kind of we do a recap of what has happened in our business as a business in terms of my personal business. What were some of the successes? What were some of the failures? Or what were some of the things that didn't work to the level that I wanted them to work? And how about what are the goals kind of going into 2024? So, and also, what were some of the things that in mastery that worked well, and what is the goal as we move forward into 2024? So, I'll kind of just start personally on my personal end in terms of investing. Um, on that particular end, I think actually, let me start with this, right? My goal was this year to kind of lose a little bit of weight. So I think I accomplished that, not as much as I wanted to. But one of the goals that I had was certainly to lose a little bit of weight. And it's not that I was very fat, it's just that when you're short or you're vertically challenged, it is looks better, especially on camera, if you are a little bit trim and don't have as much basically body fat. So leaner is better, and I'm not there yet, but it is. I was better this year than I was last year, and the goal into 2024 is to cut down, be leaner, not necessarily have less weight. That is something that I want to accomplish a little bit more, simply by walking and basically eating once a day. I mean, I've done that for years, but I love food. So once a day, I tend to eat a lot, even though I'm not eating bad food, but I tend to eat a lot in one sitting. And it is how it is. But that's the goal next year, is to kind of trim up a little bit more. But let's get to business. So in terms of business this year, if I look at it personally, my end, there were a lot of pending properties that were carryovers that were coming in basically from last year. So properties that we had done mailings for, properties we had bought off market. A lot of those properties were carryovers, and I wanted to be at about 50 properties in terms of Airbnbs as far as properties up and running. I don't have 50 Airbnbs up and running in the Chicago market yet. I'm somewhere around 26, 27 at this point. And so I missed my goal almost by half, right? Now, 50 was an arbitrary number. I just made up that number out of thin air, that I felt I was behind. So I was like, okay, let me really kind of push that. And the nice thing is that ended up, I think maybe I ended up with six flips. Six flips. I looked at the numbers on an average. If I look at it, it wasn't like they did anything extraordinary, but on an average, the six flips made about 55 to 57,000. I don't have the exact number, but 55 to 57,000 on six flips. Three of them made a lot more, and then three of them made about a little bit less than that. So it averages out somewhere around 55 to $57,000. Now, mind you, all of the flips were less than 300,000 in terms of price. So relative to the amount of money I had invested, the numbers on an average were pretty good, because I don't typically do flips. I haven't done flips in a long time. Last year, there were just, I mean, this year, I should say, 2023, there were a bunch of properties that I could not keep, or they didn't make sense to keep as Airbnbs. And I could have rented them out, but they were in B areas or C areas. A couple of them were in areas where you can't do a flip, like South Holland. You cannot, you cannot keep a rental because it's 10% per street. They only allow 10% rentals. So I had to flip that. Some of the properties I did not want to flip, but I had to flip those. So I didn't have a goal, quite honestly, of flipping properties at all, but some of them ended up being flips. There were a few wholesales. Generally, these are properties that are going to people in mastery. So sometimes I won't even charge anything because there needs to be a margin on the basically property. And so there were a few of those that I sent basically just to people in mastery. It made more sense for them to buy it rather than me buying it. I didn't want to do the work. And then there were a couple wholesales that had a really good juicy profit, somewhere around 65, $70,000. Now, in terms of the buy side of it, I thought I did good this year in terms of on the wholesale side, meaning buying properties from wholesalers. Generally, I don't buy that many properties from wholesalers. This year, I thought I did really good. I think I looked at my numbers. I paid out for the properties I bought. I think I paid out somewhere around $230,000 or $240,000 in wholesale fees, and I'm very happy with it this year. Maybe it may have been a little bit more. I know it's not less for sure, but there were a lot of good deals that wholesalers brought me this year. So I was obviously, if I'm paying out that much amount of money to wholesalers and fees, that means I'm getting properties that are really juicy from a lot of wholesalers. So I'm very grateful. That is something 100% we're going to expand next year. That is my commitment, that 100%. And that is going to be not only just for me, but even for Mastery, because we want to be the biggest purchasers of properties in terms of numbers from wholesalers in Chicago. Already, as a group in Mastery, we have the largest number volume of transactions. That's just a and it has been like that for a while now, obviously, because Mastery has grown. But what I feel, we leave a lot of meat on the table, a lot of deals on the table, because we're not going directly to wholesalers on a social media mass marketing campaign that, hey, bring us your deals. You don't know how to close them, we'll close them. You don't know how to buy them, or you don't have buyers for them, we'll buy them. Right? That we will be the go-to source where we have the funds, we have the wherewithal, we have the rehab skills. So a lot of properties, as long as they're good properties, right? Of course, we're not going to overpay for the properties, but as long as they're good properties, that is something that I feel Chicago was lacking in terms of the number of wholesalers. In the last year and a half, a lot of people have been waking up to that Chicago is obviously the third largest market in the country, yet there was a huge gap of people doing wholesales, and that those numbers are kicking up. And you'll see that from our end also, that our need for amount of properties has grown so much that you will see me turn back to marketing. I had done this whole experiment about a year and a half ago, where I said, okay, can I make $1 million doing just basically wholesales? And then around property number 23, 24, I kind of gave up. And I gave up because I didn't want to sell any of the properties. I think of all the properties that I found, that my goal was, okay, maybe make $1 million to do with wholesales. And there were properties that were really nice properties with large margins, and I just was not willing to sell them. And this year, the goal is not necessarily to do wholesales, but the goal is to buy a lot of properties to become in front of all wholesalers that are major players in the Chicagoland market. Already, we get targeted as a group by a lot of wholesalers, but we have never really gone out and done specific marketing to people that may have property or two or three or four under contract every year, because I didn't think about it. And that's something we're going to change, because our needs for buying property as a whole group, as me personally, they have really kicked up. Because beginning of, I think it was about a year and a half ago, when I looked at my personal portfolio, there's a lot of properties I own with Rahul. There's other properties I have that are completely paid off. And I felt that if I'm doing mastery, if I'm doing that, I need to be, why am I not at 400 or 500 houses? And I'm not there yet. And what I looked back at, what I was doing was a lot of things I had done well. We had paid down a lot of properties, but I felt that I wanted to build a bigger portfolio. And hence I started doubling down and buying. and that is to continue in 2024, and it is going to continue a lot harder pace than we have. I think right now I have about 16 properties under rehab on my personal portfolio of properties. Six of them happen to be flips, which is very rare for me nowadays. I don't do flips at all. That's not my focus. But because there were properties that just showed up that I don't necessarily want to keep them in certain areas. I mean, there's a property right now I have in fact, in Wheaton, right? Another one in Glenwood, another one in Lansing, another one in South Holland. I just got another one in Maywood. I just got so there's a bunch of these properties that it's kind of hard, right? Because a lot of people from Master are keeping these properties, and they're great properties. Yet, for me, in certain areas, I would consider them B minus to C areas. I'm trying to buy properties in purely A areas across the board, and either I'm going to keeping them for Airbnbs or I'm keeping them for rentals because today I can do that. Obviously, at one for the longest time, I could not do that. I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to do that financially because you start buying 15, 20, 30 properties a year all in A areas, you end up tying up a lot of capital even when I'm because I don't want to put big loans. Can I put big loans and do 100% cash out of every property that I do? A lot of them I can, not every property, but a lot of them I can. But I don't want to have a $300,000 loan, even if the property appraises at 550, 600. I just don't personally, for me, this is just for me, I don't feel comfortable with it. So I tend to used to be, I would never take a loan more than 120, 130. Now I'm up to actually 230 is the largest loan that I have on properties that are worth three, $400,000, $500,000. And because maybe I'm a bit too conservative, but that's just how it is. So I'm going to probably end up doing next year. The goal is probably it's going to end up being about 14, 15 flips. And I don't want to do a flip anything at all whatsoever less than 55,000 net profit, right? It's just not worth the effort. Now, mind you, this year I did a good job with flips, I felt, because I personally did not have to get involved. So that was something that I felt very satisfied with. What I was not happy with the flips was how long it took. But there are two people that watch kind of all the properties that I have under rehab. One is Harry and one is Matthew. Matthew is completely new to this whole thing. And so a lot of times I felt I did not give him enough direction and I did not do a good enough job of basically kind of holding his feet to the fire and helping him with the next step, in terms of I just put a bunch of property in his lap and I'm like, hey, man, run with it. Then I'm like, hey, why is this not done? And what I've realized this year was that was 100% my fault, that you can't take your headaches and put it in somebody else's lap that hasn't done this before and then expect them to perform, right? That is not poor performance. That is poor training on my part. Now, if I do the training properly, meaning I'm on him that I need this done, this done, this done, break it down, and then it's not done, then I could basically kind of blame him. And part of it also is shorthanded in terms of on the rehab numbers. Excuse me, on the rehabbers. I have certain numbers I want to hit and I tend to be fairly tight about things. Plumbers, we use in house. HVAC, we use Miss Bieta at Cool Heat and Cooling. And for electrical, we use Hassan, right? So I have roles kind of segregated and basically people that do that on a regular basis for me. But yet, in terms of the person who's kind of the jack of all trades at GC, I have two people that I use, and those two teams or three teams, they go from property to property, property. And at a time, they're juggling 6 to 7 properties at a time. So my rate of buying properties was more than how quickly they could turn the properties around. So that was something that I did not feel that we did a good job. And part of it also was poor management on my part. Clearly, I will take 100% responsibility for that. That some of these just took too long. Some of it was maybe the villages, but I believe some of it was poor management on my end in terms of how these properties were turned and brought online. And the reason that I say that is with flips, you're going to make less money, right? I mean, if a property is sitting on the market for every month that a flip sits on the market, if you take the cost of money, even if you paid cash for it, you take the cost of utilities, you take the cost of taxes, you take the cost of loss of revenue from the capital. Every single month that a property sits on the market, it's costing you close to $9,000 to $10,000. I know people will be like, Andrew, that doesn't make any sense. If I'm in the deal for 200,000, 300,000, how's it going to cost me $9,000 or $10,000? Well, it's the opportunity cost lost. There is a cost to it, meaning could you have been doing something else? Now, obviously, you can always be doing more, but I felt that I should have made a good, instead of whatever the profit was on the flips, right? It should have been larger because, and the sole reason behind it is it just took too long. I do not feel that there was a pullback in terms of pricing. If anything, all the flips that at least I sold, they were all in uh, B, solid B to A areas, right? And most of them were B areas. And so in those areas, the prices did not pull back at all. Even with the interest rates that went up this year, I did not feel that. Now, if I correlate to that in Mastery, in terms of what I was doing on my end and what was going on in Mastery, month of August, September, October, November were the largest amounts of closings and the largest amount of loan docs that has ever been done in Mastery, right? So that is something I really feel happy about, that there were so many people doing loans to other people in Mastery, and there were so many people that were buying properties within Mastery. So even though the market was sky high, like last 2 years, the market has been higher than it has ever been. It's obviously been higher than it was back in 2006, 2005, and 6. But yet, the number of properties bought in Mastery has been higher than it has ever been, right? And which is exciting. I wish every single person in Mastery that comes to Mastery, we could help them buy their first property. It's not going to, I mean, obviously, that doesn't happen. The percentage is very high, but we don't succeed at 100%. And we're never going to. I'm aware of that fact. But yet, obviously, we want to get the percentages even higher, because at the end of the day, success is not how many people come to Mastery. Success is how many properties is each individual investor in Mastery buying, because that is the out product of it, not joining a class. Is not the success part of it. How much can we push that? That is a big commitment that we're making for the next year. But as far as if I talk about rentals, if I talk about Airbnbs, I did not buy as many rentals this year, right? Because most of the properties I bought ended up going to Airbnbs. So that's something that going into 2024, I'm going to kick that up. That I want to buy equal amount of Airbnbs and I want to buy equal amount of rentals. And if you wonder why behind that, as we started buying Airbnbs, a lot of times what I had heard, and just me like everybody else, I heard a lot of excitement about Airbnbs in the marketplace. But yet, I tend to be one of those people that until I can do something personally and prove it, just because somebody says something on a YouTube channel, just because somebody says, "Oh my God, I bought an Airbnb, I'm killing it," right? That doesn't mean anything. Meaning one Airbnb and you kill it on that Airbnb, right? That doesn't mean anything, because it depends on the location. What did you pay for it? What is the demand in that area? What is the occupancy rate? Does the village or the town or the area allow it or not? Is it seasonal? Is it not seasonal? There are a host of factors. So, I mean, I have Airbnbs that every single month make 3, 4, 5,000 bucks net after expenses. And then I have other Airbnbs that we just looked at the numbers yesterday, right? When we looked at the numbers yesterday for December, and now mind you, out of that, this is just a set of 11 Airbnbs numbers we looked at. On 11 Airbnbs, there was about $54,000 that came in December. Now, that number may seem like a lot of money to you, but when you take $2,500 per Airbnb. Now, on some of those, my payments are lower, PITI is lower. But if I'm just averaging it out, just for easy math, 2,500 times 11, that puts you at somewhere around 30 some thousand in terms of payouts as far as PITI you paid. Then on each one of them, you have, say, $500 in utilities, right? So that times 11, that puts you at 5,500. Then you have your Turo. We use Turo, I'm sorry, Turnal to turn, meaning for cleaning. So now that number was $7,400, right? Last this month, if I'm looking at the month of December. Then I look at, okay, I have to pay a salary to Harry because Harry's managing that. So then I have to put that in because I'm not managing any of these properties. So if I take the gross money earned, subtract the PITI, subtract what I paid for the uh, the Turo and all the stuff, that kind of stuff, then what I paid for utilities, the subscriptions, then I subtract what I paid on payroll for Harry. When I look at that number, it is not that big a number. Now, obviously, I'm taking the month of December, right? I'm taking the month of November. Now, if you look at the months of, if you look at, say, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, those months, some of those months were extremely profitable. But I have to look at the good part of things as well as the bad part of things. And what I don't like about Airbnb is that up and down. It's just that's the nature of that business. Nobody's going to take away that part of ebb and flow. And it's going to be sometimes going to be very good. So then you got to put some money aside for months that are not going to be as good. And some of these properties, mind you, just came online. And also the earnings was low because a couple of the properties they literally we just put on the market. So those properties they don't have reviews yet. They're not kind of up and running yet, or there are discounts going on in the first month. So on that end, what I felt was that when I look at it, that November, the month of November was barely okay. The month of December was barely okay. But March, April, May, June, July, August, almost September, very strong in general. So because if I look at the 11 properties, if I take a portfolio of 11 properties, right, that's in kind of two portfolios. We were just combining them because Harry is managing those, somebody else is managing some others. Harry has another group he's managing. So if I look at that, that would I rather have 11, 12, 15, 20, 50, whatever it is, Airbnbs versus having the same quantity of rentals? You ask me honestly, right? You ask me honestly, I would rather have 20 rentals going rather than 7 or 8 Airbnbs. Why? Because the amount of touches, the amount of things that you have to do with Airbnbs is a lot more. That's just a fact. Now, does that mean you can make a lot of money if you have the right 7 Airbnbs? 100%. I mean, there's not even a question, right? When the Airbnbs work, what we're finding is in the Chicago market, you're making about 1,500 to 2,000 bucks net after expenses. So 1,500 being a apropos number to me. If I average out the Airbnbs that I have, and across the board, they're making somewhere around $1,100 to $1,500, right? 1,500 being absolute home run, right? Across the board for the whole year on each Airbnb. I mean, you just cannot go wrong with it. But it's going to be dependent on location. With Airbnbs, it is a lot more location dependent than it is on how cute your house is, right? A lot of it is driven by location because imagine this, right? In the Chicagoland area we're talking about, your house, you can only do so many things. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Sure. There's somebody that has a tree house somewhere in their backyard or somewhere. I saw that. So, oh my God, they kill it with that. But how many of those are there, right? What am I going to do? Go build a tree house in every house? Is the village going to even allow that? Now, in this particular case, the person lives in the house and they have this little tree house they rent out. It's something boutique, it's something fun. People will pay exorbitant amount of money for it, but that is not a business. So this year, if I'm going to refrain from saying, is Airbnb good? It's been pretty good. It's been pretty solid. Is it something that eyes, blind, you should do it? I do not believe that. Rentals is easier over long term. It's a very stable, it's a very sustainable business. So the lesson that if I was to look at it and learn from it, right, is that there are certain areas that you think it should work, but it doesn't work as well. I'll give you guys an area like that. So Broadview. If I look at Broadview, the Airbnbs in that area, you would think there's a huge hospital there, the Veterans Hospital over there. Is it Veterans? Whatever that hospital is, big hospital, huge. You would think close to a hospital. It's right by the expressway coming out of Chicago. Pretty decent area, good, solid, beautiful brick houses. You would think that should be a market which should be very strong. What we find with Broadview is that number one, the stays are short, 2 3 day stays, right? And on top of that, because they're 2 or 3 day stays, you have a lot of cleaning fees that you incur. But then a lot of times people think, well, Andrew, don't you put the fee on the guest? Yes, you put the fee on the guest. But what happens is this is deceiving, because when you get the check, like not the check, when the deposit comes into your account from Airbnb, it looks pretty good. Oh my God, you made $6,000. Yeah, but you had 12 cleanings, 15 cleanings in one house. Well, guess what? Each cleaning, you're basically getting hit for a cleaning. Now you have turnover. Now you have to put in supplies. You have to do all the rest of the stuff that goes with it. And if you look at it, it is not quite as profitable as it looks, because think about it, right? Even when I was doing the numbers, right? Did I account for toilet paper? Did I account for maybe the soap? Did I account? There's a lot of things that go into it. So it's not quite as simple as it is a regular rental. I still personally, as many Airbnbs as I'm buying, right? I am still 100% a long-term buy and hold guy. I mean, I 100%, because those numbers are very predictable, very duplicatable. Airbnb numbers are not quite as predictable, duplicatable. Having said all that, next year, some of the changes that I'm making is that this year, because of the a lot of properties that I bought, the outbound marketing from my end for my particular business had stopped. And that is something that, just like with the RIA, we have meetings ongoing all the time, every time. I am going to go back, and I allocated a budget for that basically for this year, that I'm going to go back to doing marketing, about a $60,000 budget for marketing, and I'm going to spend it in two different areas as of right now. I've narrowed it down to a couple different areas. Number one is mailings. Mailings have worked very, very well for us, and that is something 100% we're going to go back to. Now, I don't have a big mailing budget. The budget that I'm going to have for our mailings is going to be $2,400 to $2,500 a month. That's it, right? For now. Now it may change after say 6 months, but for right now, I have a commitment for the next 6 months that I'm going to do the mailings starting January back into those mailings. And obviously, we're taking the people that have a high likelihood of moving, right? So most of the mailings are going to be dedicated towards the lists where we feel there's a very high factor of people doing something, right? Including the pre-foreclosure list. Now, obviously, for $2,400, you cannot mail everywhere, right? It's just not enough. And why did I pick $2,400? The reason I picked $2,400 was that when I started doing mailings about a year and a half ago, I had done an experiment, and the way the experiment was I was going to take $700 was month one. Month two, the budget was $950. The month three, the budget was $1,100. Month four, it was about $1,500, and it went up all the way where it got to about $2,500. Now, month one, we didn't get anything. Month two, we didn't get anything. But by the end of month two, we started finding a lot of leads. Callbacks started coming in because the mailings had gone out to a couple people. And my deal was I'm going to have 6 to 7 touch points minimum to the same person, right? Meaning I did a mailing, then again, another hits, another hits, another hits, another hits, and the new list from next month gets added to it. Hence, the 700 becomes 1100, 1100 becomes 15, 15 becomes 18. But then you need a hype, like some sort of a threshold where you're going to stop. My number was somewhere around $2,500. So I'm just going back to that. But I can tell you this with certainty. For me, mailings worked very, very, very well. Right? This is for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for you because it's going to depend on what's your follow up. How many mailings do you do? Are you persistent with it? Are you consistent with it? What part of town you're doing mailings in? Are you actually able to buy properties when they pop up? Do you know what you're doing? So all those host of factors will come in. The second thing that I am going to add to it is some of the online marketing for leads. Basically, hey, do you want to sell your property? We buy this, properties, good, bad, ugly, that sort of thing. But online, not billboards. I did not billboards. Excuse me. I did the TV part of it. For me, it just absolutely bombed. And the reason it bombed was not because we didn't get leads. We got actually a lot of leads, but a lot of the leads were coming from areas in Chicago that I was not interested in buying properties, right? And so basically, a lot of them we just pitched them instead of maybe giving to somebody like Blake in Mastery that knows how to work them, that has back end buyers. I could not give those properties to people in Mastery because I felt the areas were too adventurous for them. So I chose not to give those properties. So that amount of money that I spent on TV was a complete waste for me. So that we're not doing next year for sure. I mean, in 2024, we're not going to do. We are going to do some form of online marketing, and be it a part of it is PPC, part of it is Facebook, part of it is couple other things. So we are going to, so for that, also every single month I dedicated $3,000, right? So on the mailings, it's about $2,500, $2,500. And on that side, it's about $3,000. So, and then I'm going to take somebody and I'm just going to pay them a certain amount of money every single month to be able to do that for me, take in the inbound calls, and then do the follow up. Ideally, the way it should be done is you have to do it or you have somebody on staff doing it. Now, for most of those investors, that's having somebody on staff being able to pay the salary is not going to be viable. But for some people, clearly it is. Otherwise, you need to be doing that. And one of the simplest ways is grab a list, find any list, if it's short sales, whether it's absentee owners, whether it is people that have probates, whatever the case may be. Skip trace that and then call those people. It works, guys. The biggest issue is, are you willing to work that system? Right? Last when we did mailings, they worked for us. When we did kind of online marketing, it worked for us. When we did some outbound calls, it worked for us. But yet, it did not work to the extent that it works for other people. And I think I know what the reason behind it is. So I'm going to attempt that again this year. But for the first 6 months, we're only going to stick to two marketing strategies, and that's it. And what my goal is that if I'm spending about $100,000 in marketing, I want to be able to buy a minimum. I mean, obviously, I want to get recovery on the money. And on top of that, I want to be able to get in terms of profits if I try to flip it, or in terms of returns wise, at least, at least 10 folds the return. Now, mind you, for me, return is also in terms of the equity that I keep in properties, right? So if I'm doing a mailing campaign this year, let's just say, and I'm doing a mailing campaign where I'm spending 2,400 a month, 2,400 times 10 is going to be 24,000 plus another 2 months, so somewhere around $32,000 plus the amount of money that I'm paying somebody to do that for me. So if I'm doing that campaign, and let's just say it's costing me a total this year for $50,000, on that, I want to be able to get a minimum of $500,000 in return, right? Otherwise, it just doesn't make any sense. And think about this. If I'm buying a property and there's not an 80, 90, $100,000 spread in that deal, then why the heck am I buying it? Right? So a lot of times people are like, Andrew, that's not a reasonable return that you're talking about. No. I'm talking about a reasonable return because a lot of the properties for me, I don't end up flipping them. I end up keeping them either as a long-term rental or as a midterm or a short-term Airbnb. And because my focus is not to do a flip. right? That's just not my focus. For other people, they're like, oh my God, why would you not do a flip? So I'll give you guys a dilemma I'm in right now. Right now, I have a property in Wheaton. I bought it in the MLS. I paid 292 for it. It was escalation offer. I was the highest bidder, 292. I just got the rehab done, and the rehab cost me about 45,000 bucks. Uh, some of you guys will not be very happy. If you look at the rehab, you're like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful house, and it's not a over the top rehab. But I believe it'll sell, and I think it'll sell for somewhere around 530. So then what would you do if you were doing that property? You're in the property for about 340, plus you have another, say, 10, 15,000 in carrying costs. Then you have selling costs, so you're in it for about 360. Right? If you sell the property for 530 or even 500, what should you do? Should you flip that out? Should you rent that out? Because clearly Wheaton is a great area, but because the principal, interest, taxes, insurance is going to be really high, that's the reason why I am not keeping the property. So it's just kind of one of those things, but I just thought I would share that. Now, so the goal next year is going to be is to do a handful, about 10, 12 flips, 14 flips. Minimum profit I want is 55,000 bucks on those. So is it going to make a million or not? I don't know. Right. And the reason I say in that particular department, I don't know, is because that is not my focus. Those flips happen as a happenstance because you find some properties that make good sense to flip. Now, on the other hand, wholesaling, I don't really focus on. If there are some properties that we wholesale, it's fine, right? It's not my focus. My focus is 100% to keep properties for rentals or for Airbnbs. And that focus next year is going to continue because I need to get to minimum of 50 properties that are Airbnbs only in the Chicago market as quick as humanly possible. I'm already behind. Now, if we move on from that side of it, what about Mastery? What about Chicago RIA? What about national RE funding? What happens there? Next year, this is our commitment, and we are making a major commitment in terms of hiring more people on the social media side of things because I feel we're extremely poor at it. So we just did one hire. We're looking for another person, and that is a major spend that we are going to do, period. That the shift was always, all these years since 2008 when I started investing till today, we have been a real estate investment company. And then because I was passionate about speaking, because I was passionate about mastery, I did the mastery events. Now, over time, obviously, they become profitable, no question about it. But yet, what I find is we are in the Chicago market, we do well with them. We do run them with a high profit margin. But the problem is that we're stuck, we're stagnant, right? That we can work our butt off, and yet I'm comfortable. So this year, it's the year to break out of it, right? Is how do we get to 25 to 30 million? And I don't know how that's going to happen. And so things have to shift, which is that me managing the day-to-day things, we are going to have to make a shift in terms of, on the real estate side of it, still continue to buy, because I can't just be a quote unquote a guru and sell a bunch of shit to other people and then not do it myself. That would not be genuine, and that would not make sense. But you will see that, and that is, the reason I'm saying it and putting myself out there is that that is my commitment to me, because I have to first make up my mind in my own business that we need to grow. And I had not looked at it from this perspective, but now this is going to be a big thing from my end, is that everybody that got me to this point, that how do we help them make a lot more money? Because if they make a lot more money, I get to buy a bigger jet. I mean, I'm just telling you very selfishly that I get to buy a bigger jet. Why? Because that means that the whole business made a lot of money. And I think we have the potential there. We have a great group of people, not only in terms of on staff, but a great community of volunteers within Mastery, a great community within Mastery that wants to grow. But it starts 100% with the leadership. And if I don't live the message, then guess what? I can be stagnant, fat, dumb, and happy. I'm just not willing to do it because then I feel that I'm not living up to my potential. So today's live got a little bit too long, but I just wanted to kind of express the whole thing. So you will see some of those changes, and hopefully by the end of the year, we're saying, oh my God, we achieved at least part of our goals and we grew. Hopefully, in terms of properties, hopefully you get to grow in terms of properties. Hopefully, you find that inspiration from our end that this year the goal is to have more social media out to basically create more of a FOMO factor. And I'm telling you that point blank because if other people can do it, then so can you, right? And we all need that. I look at different things and I'm like, oh my God, why are we not doing this? And hopefully you look at it in a positive way and say, hey, why are we not growing? So I'm making the commitment in terms of my time, effort, and financially. So the question is, what about you? Like, what are your goals for next year? And I want to wish you and your family, hopefully you guys had a great Merry Christmas. Now, as we go into the new year, I know everybody likes to party. There's already a party going on in the office. Lori is behind the microphone, behind the camera, and she's laughing because they had too many shots of tequila. I'm spared by it because I can't really, more than one glass of wine, I can't drink. So I'm pretty fortunate in that way. But genuinely, right? What is your resolution going into the new year for you, right? I hope you should have a good time. You should spend time with your family, friends, have a great 31st going into the new year. But January 1st, I challenge you, don't take that day off. I'm not saying go work, but at least take some time aside, put down some goals, and let's go to work. Having said that, guys, thanks a bunch. Thanks a bunch for watching. Thanks a bunch for referring so many people, helping us grow, and talk to you the first of the year.